right, welcome everybody to the APA Live broadcast here. We're going to talk about hatching problems and incubation problems, maybe not in that order, but we're going to talk about all the problems you might see as you're trying to turn those eggs into nice, fluffy chicks. We have a really awesome panel here tonight. We're going to be joined by Allison Steward from Dawnridge Farm. We got Erin Angulo from Dawnridge Farm and Karen Johnston from Peak Poultry. Karen's going to actually moderate our session tonight. She's got some questions she's going to ask Allison and Erin, and then Allison will share a short presentation on some cause and effect of problems you might see back to the cause of what it could be. And then true to form, we'll open it back up here at the end for our Q&A. So this will be a live session. We'll take questions at the end. You're welcome to chat as we go along, but we will put our replay out afterwards publicly, and that'll be probably the first half. We'll see how the session goes, but generally it's the first half of the session, and the Q&A doesn't get published. So we'll see what happens there. So first of all, welcome, esteemed panel. It's glad to have you on here tonight. We're ramping it up. We're getting more and more people on here. It looks like a party. So if you're just joining us, just coming in here, do a little small talk for just a minute, let people join, but would love to have you say hi in the comments. Just let us know kind of where you're at and what you're hatching. All right. Are we ready?
We're ready.
There's no sense waiting around. So Karen, take it away.
All right. Erin, thanks for coming. This is a complicated subject and it's not something everybody wants to talk about it. Allison, thanks for joining us on your first appearance on APA's Heritage Poultry Breeders Live.
Thanks.
We're going to get started because, like always, there's never enough time. So, Erin, I know you breed Delawares. How long have you been honing your incubation skills, and how many chicks do you think you've managed in that time?
Oh my gosh, Karen, you make me think that. We started breeding about 7 years ago. We got our first chicks 8 years ago. So we received our first chicks in May, and the following January, we started incubating and hatching. So we've been doing it for 7 years, and every year is consistently getting better.
Well, that's the right way to go.
How many chicks have I hatched? Oh my gosh, I'm going to say 4,000 to 5,000.
Yeah. It's respectable.
Yeah. Not as much as Allison, but we're a small place, so we're doing okay.
You've learned a thing or two in that time, yes, I'm sure.
Just a few, yeah.
All right, Allison, same to you. How long and how many?
So ours, we started in May of 2017, and probably the first year, I don't know, maybe somewhere between 4,000 to 5,000 chicks. Last year alone, we were just shy of 8,000. Wow. So I'm hoping, so far with the pandemic, we've seen a lot more increase of people wanting chicks. So I anticipate maybe, just maybe, hitting 10,000 this year.
Nice. Erin, we're just gonna, Mike told y'all already, but we're gonna do a quick rundown of the most common questions, and then we'll get into the troubleshooting. But I think without the basis, the troubleshooting can get, lose a little. So Erin, what factors do you think are important for a good hatch?
For us, it's, in the beginning, we used to stick every single egg into the incubator. It didn't matter what shape it was. We would collect, usually for 7 days. We always do the first hatch for ourselves. So we would collect for 7 days, just stick everything in, and that's what I would run my numbers off of. So even with that, I was getting 90% fertility and probably 87, 88% hatchability. So looking back, that's like, wow, that was really good considering what we said, And now I'm picky. This is the first year I've really decided I'm just going to only put in what's a good shaped egg and not too huge. Now our chickens like huge eggs. And so now I'm still getting the same fertility and hatchability. But I think our chicks are stronger and better that hatch. So I think that's made a difference in the quality of our chicks that hatch.
Good. What kind of incubator and hatcher do you use?
Me?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we use the GQF 1500 series. So we have 2 incubators and 1 hatcher.
Allison, I think you use the same GQF
Yeah.
as Erin.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Yep.
so we'll go on to the next question. So Allison, what temperature do you want your incubators running at?
Typically, I like mine at 99.5. That's usually about our sweet spot. I think on average, they're all set to that.
And is 99.5, that's what you set to? But what temperature does does it actually run? You set it at 99 and it stays right there? Yeah.
Yeah, most of them I set to 99.5. I do have a few. Each individual incubator definitely carries its own temperature fluctuation. So I counteract that by changing the temperature as needed. But I'd say most of them are at 99.5. Some of them I do have at 98.5 because they just hold a higher temperature. And sometimes that just depends on where the incubator is in the room. Like if it's in a corner, the airflow isn't the same as one that might be on the end.
Yeah, I've got one incubator. I set at 99.8 to be in the range. I want them, between 99.3 and 99.8. That's what I try to keep, them in. So, but the other one I set at 99.5. So it's the same thing. It's like, I know that one, just needs to be set a little different. So, but so a thermometer inside the incubator is helpful.
Definitely.
So that's not just what does the panel say. Erin, you're in California, right? So humidity settings are especially important for you.
Yeah, it's interesting you guys are talking about, so ours are set at 99.3, and every time I check them, they might be 1 degree higher or lower, but it stays really consistent at that. We have like 20% humidity in the winter inside our house where it's at. The room that we're in is, the room that the incubators are in is very, always is the same temperature. It's probably around 72. We set our incubators, the humidity set between 50 and 55%. And that's with a 90% fertility and an 88% hatchability. I feel like that's working for us.
So your humidity range is, you said?
Anywhere between 50 to 55, I'm happy with it. If it goes lower, then I'm adding wicks or things like that.
Okay. Allison, are you looking at the same for your humidity?
It really depends. A lot of times, I'd say each incubator works a little differently. So I have some that really stay about 25 to 35%. And then I have others that are 45 to 55%. And honestly, depending on what breeds I put in the incubator will depend which ones do better.
Same thing. I feel like I just have a huge range of humidity that seems to work okay. That it's not as precise as some people try to make it. Erin, this is maybe puerile, but how do you adjust your humidity if it's not, since you have to add so much? Mine is pretty close to what our house humidity is. So it's not a...
Oh, okay. We have a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket up above set with, and we just keep it full of water so that it supplies the water with a float to the 2 incubators. And we just check the humidity twice a day. I'll just go down and look at it. There can be days where it doesn't change at all. It just stays like a consistent 52, 54%. If it goes a little low, then we just usually flip the wick. And it usually has 1 wick in it, and the pads, the little pads that come with it. And that's all we have to do where we are.
Are you still using those pads that come with the GQF? You haven't switched over to air filters?
No, we use those, but sometimes they get so yucky, and they get old and they start falling apart. And so we just buy new ones. So that's all we've ever used.
So you buy them from GQF or one of the other resellers of. Okay. Yeah. Allison, do you use the pans and the sponge pads?
We just use the containers, like the little pans inside. We don't use the sponge pads. We never have. And actually, like the only time it matters for us, if it gets real dry, we'll actually just close down our hatchery. Like our hatchery is just one room. And we'll actually get, we just have a giant container that we fill with water and try to increase the humidity in the overall room.
Okay. So instead of the micro of the hatcher, you're just changing the room.
The whole room. Yeah.
That makes sense. If it's not your living room. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So Erin, same questions about the hatching in the hatcher. What temperature do you set the hatcher for, and what humidity are you looking for?
Ours is set to whatever it came from the manufacturer, which I believe is like 99.2. And humidity, I do between 55 and 60. But after listening to Matt Hemmer last month talking about what he has it is at 65, this next hatch I want to increase it a little bit and see if that makes it different in our hatchability. Just because we have kept it a little bit lower. And I haven't opened eggs like Allison and Karen have, so I'm really curious to see that part of the conversation later. So I do want to do a test and see if increasing the humidity from 60 up to 62 or 63 will make a difference.
Let us know. Allison, I know you hatch multiple breeds. Erin's doing one. You're doing multiple breeds. Do you think they all have the same ideal humidity for hatching and incubating?
Yes and no. I think that majority of them do, but we find there's definitely differences between some of our breeds. So our Delaware, I think, prefer a lower humidity, but then like our Copper Morans, like they prefer lower humidity in the incubator, but then when you go to the hatcher, they like a steady incline of the humidity. So I usually don't get to say like, okay, I'm going to put only this many in this hatcher. It usually eggs have to go in when they're ready. So I can't play with that. But if I did have the time and space in the hatchers, I would definitely put different breeds in one hatcher with a lower humidity than another.
Cool. I wish you luck with that.
Yeah.
Well, and if you're changing your room, the whole room's humidity, then it's like that. Okay, so let's talk real quick about which eggs you choose to put in the incubator. So, Allison, what factors do you consider in choosing which eggs to incubate?
A lot. I generally, I like a large egg. Anything that's smaller than a large or extra large, double yolker potentially, I don't like to set those. I just find that in general, they're not going to hatch. It won't be successful anyway. And then a good egg quality, like the shell has to be right. No cracks, obviously. None of the weird wrinkly eggs. What else? It just has to be a good shaped egg too. Like I don't want a long oblong egg, something funny like that.
Golf ball size shape.
Right. Yeah.
Erin, is that similar for you, or do you do anything else before
Super
they go
similar.
in?
Our Delawares lay large to jumbo eggs, so we don't really have a problem with small eggs with our breed. But sometimes we get these huge, look like turkey eggs, and so those we don't set. Our eggs have definitely gotten larger over time, and so. But yeah, sometimes they're weird shape, like you can't tell which is the top and the bottom. So those we don't set. And the ones that have wrinkled, and we candle before we do any of them. So the same stuff that Allison's doing.
Okay. Yeah. But I heard something in there. You candle them before you put them in the incubator?
Yes. My husband Carlos candles all of them to see if there's any fine cracks that we don't see. So we do candle every egg before it goes into the incubator.
That's helpful. Allison, that reminds me, do you do anything else before they go in the incubator that nobody else does?
Yeah, so I don't candle them, but I do wash them. I like to wash them in warm water. I know everybody panics because you're removing the bloom, but I promise it works. We wash our eggs. We let them air dry after spraying them with a 10% bleach solution. And then once I sort out which ones I'm actually setting, we then spray ours with a diluted Tetrol solution as well. And that essentially disinfects, but it's almost like a film that goes over the egg, which is like replacing the bloom in a way.
Well, you're not the only one. All the factories sanitize their eggs before they go in and during. So, yeah. Okay. So, Erin, how long do you keep the hatching eggs before putting them in the incubator?
We only keep them for 7 days. If we have a big order, we might do 10 days, but I would say the average is definitely 7 days before. Sometimes we have a small order and we're only, might need to collect only for a couple of days. So, but the max is generally 7 days before we would put them in the incubator.
And that's just to improve hatchability?
Yes.
You're just trying to, okay. And so, Erin, same for you again. How do you store and maintain those eggs during storage? Do you just put them all in a giant bin but on top of the incubator like Allison has there?
Just like Allison has behind her head. No,
she claims those are wooden eggs, but
they are.
If it's cold enough in the garage, which right now it is, then they're set into egg trays that hold 30, like you can find in the grocery store, and we just tilt them they're probably tilted 3 different times a day. They get moved. We label them, we write on them the pen they came from and the date. And then if it's not cold enough in the garage, then they'll go into a refrigerator and we'll turn it as high as we can, meaning it's as in the 40s, and that's how we'll store them.
Yeah, so similar for me, I use a wine fridge that I can set at 65. It's the highest that it goes, so I can set it at 65. And because it's not a high quality wine fridge, it gets cooler and then warms up and then gets cooler and warms up. So 65 keeps it below 65, but goes all the way down to 55. So I don't want to set it any lower because I think, what do they say ideal is? I think 55 is about it. Isn't that what?
I've heard 60.
60. Never mind.
Yeah.
60. Go with that. So, it's one of those things you look up and you do a whole bunch of research at first, and then you just do what you do. Okay. So now you've both selected which eggs are most likely to hatch. You've saved them for a short time. You put them in the incubator. You kept them. Took good care of them. You put them in. Oh, sorry. Oh, Lisa's got some of your eggs in her nest boxes.
Yeah.
So basically you now put them in the incubator and hatcher and they all hatch, right? Every time? Every
That's
egg?
what you hope, yeah.
That's the goal.
That's not what happened. All right. So we're going to turn it over to Allison now. So she's going to tell us what she does, in figuring out why things didn't hatch and what to do about it. So,
okay,
Erin, I'm going to say goodbye for now. All right. So let's see. And we're going to say bye to me too.
Okay. Okay. So first I'll just explain a little bit about like what I do here on the farm. Like at any given time, we have 3 weeks worth of eggs in incubators. So like yesterday, we would have set last night for there's day 1. I have some that are day 7. I have some that are day 14. And then I have some that actually hatched this morning. So with that, I have to be very careful about managing how well the eggs are doing in the incubator. So we prefer to candle on day 14 and day 19. We skip day 7 only because we don't find that there's enough growth. Like if there's an early embryonic death in it, that we will. Okay, hi. It made me a little nervous without somebody else.
Yeah, I'm like, I think maybe she'd be more comfortable if she could talk to somebody. Let's go back.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. But yeah, we skip day 7 just because I don't find there's enough growth in when I candle day 7 to really hone into, should I toss this egg, keep this egg? So we skip that. But On day 14, we're candling basically we call it our fertility rate candle. So anything that is clear, obviously it's not fertile, or it depends. We'll crack it open and find out for sure. But anything with a blood ring, we'll take that out, or anything that just looks like it developed and stopped. Day 19 candle is really what we're getting into the hatcher. So we put them in day 19. So I'm candling and I'm pulling out anything that literally stopped between 14 and 19. It's very rare. I don't find too many of that in our program. And then our last, once day 21 comes, we'll actually crack the eggs open after day 21 if they didn't hatch, just to find out what happened. And that's where we call the troubleshooting part of it. So I'll let you switch over to the first slide that I've made. Just kind of sum up, the first 4 slides are from day 1 to day 14, common causes and possible solutions that you might have. So after we candle day 14, the eggs I pull out, I do crack those open as well. Instead of letting them sit there and maybe if there's a bacterial infection grow and, it could be a banger, like we avoid that. So we try to crack them open pretty much right after day 14, and they're back in the hatcher or in the incubator. So typical things that you could see, you can follow along on the screen there, but poor egg quality, like we had just talked about, we're selecting the right size egg, the right quality egg, things that say, okay, this is going to be a good baby. Then you have your gathering and storage issues. So we recently installed new nest boxes. They're the rollout nest boxes. This was intentional. They say when a bloom is the last thing that's put on the egg when it's hatched, when it's laid, and that bloom, even though it could look like it's dry in 2 minutes, it could take up to 6 hours before it's actually dried. So if your nest box has poop in it, debris, any of those things can contaminate the egg. So that's one of those like storage and gathering issues that you can have. So that's something that you would see bacteria got into the egg and caused it, to the embryo to die. Then the infrequent mating, that again, we find in the summer and the winter, they're definitely less active. In the summer, it's too hot. In the winter, it's too cold. They're putting their energy into staying warm. Different things like that. There's more solutions to each of those, so I'll let you guys read them at your convenience, but you can go to the next one. And another thing, just a comment, your incubator, if you have a power outage, a piece of equipment, turner stops working, something like those, any of those things can cause day 1 to 7 losses. And then those are just common examples that you might see, like you might have missed a crack in an egg. So those are those. Next slide. And now day 8 through 14. So for me, I do 1 through 14 as one. So if you needed to look up, like if you cracked your egg open at day 14 and you didn't know how early it died, you can figure out like different growth stages for an egg. Like day 4, it's day 4 if the eye has developed, but different stages of the embryonic growth there that you'd be able to tell. So for me, I just group them all as one. So breeder nutrition is something that I don't think people necessarily think about when they're thinking about the egg hatching. But that is another problem. So if they're not getting enough calcium, the hen isn't getting enough calcium in their diet, you can experience an early embryonic death that way because the chick isn't getting enough calcium from the eggshell absorbed into their build. And then again, incubation, malfunction, all the same. So next slide, we'll start the day. I don't think that's the next one. Those are examples. You can skip that one on to the next.
But I want to look at the rotten egg.
Okay, sure. Yeah. The rotten eggs, that when they're rotten,
That's right.
Sometimes they have a smell. So
you want to very gently move that over to the trash. Yes.
Yes. Gently. That is key for sure. So day 15 through 21, some of these refer to like day 15 through 19 when they haven't actually hatched yet. So the incubator hatcher malfunction. So sometimes you can have an issue where your incubator was running perfectly temperature wise, but then your hatcher may be too low. So when you switched them over, it caused a fluctuation in temperature and would have caused a death that way. That's a possibility. Contamination. Always put your clean eggs into a clean incubator or a clean hatcher. It's very simple. I mean, it's not thought of, but sometimes air quality makes a difference. So if you have bacteria in your hatcher and you're feeding it up, you're only making the problem worse. So contamination, always think about cleaning, keep things sanitized. Egg orientation, like we talked about, if you get an egg that you're not sure which side is up or down, that can cause problems. So I've had some where I thought it was right and I was totally wrong, and I didn't find out until day 14. And so that's a long period of time for it to be upside down. Usually I can expect that majority of those don't hatch. Sometimes I have luck and they do, but that's a common issue as well. You can hit the next slide.
Did it move? Didn't move.
No. Okay, and then the age of flock. So you can keep chickens for as long as they're going to lay, or even after they stop laying. But as far as the hen, she's not going to produce as good of an egg the longer you keep her. We tend to keep ours. We have some that are 3.5 maybe, and they're just because they're really, really good chickens. They're ones that I want to keep for my flock. But in general, I do see a lower hatchability rate for those. You can go to the next slide. The next slides are actually on our breakout. So after we hatch our chicks, I usually put any that don't hatch back into the hatcher just until, so we hatch Tuesday mornings. Wednesday morning, if they haven't hatched or pipped or anything, I actually like to break them open. This will tell me everything I need to know about what's happening in my incubators and hatchers. So the information I have on these slides is combination of my personal experiences and what I have researched to figure out what's going on. So oftentimes I will get an egg that the chick clearly pipped, but then it's kind of leaking and it's dried up, it's dead. I hate those. It's frustrating because you see them right away. But if you crack that egg open, oftentimes you'll see that it's very, very moist inside, and that like liquid that's coming out of that pip is normally the same thing. So I call those drowned. And to me, my number one explanation is usually that the humidity was too high. When you think about filling a hatcher up, my hatchers, I mean, we usually have maybe 200 plus eggs in it at a time that are hatching, and each of those eggs will carry moisture. So the more you have in it, the higher the humidity is going to go. And if there's just not enough ventilation, a lot of times the humidity can be too high, and that can happen. A malposition chick, I'm sure you've experienced it. You crack open an egg and the chick is upside down, or its head is under the wrong wing. Those are all situations that, you know, a chick is specifically supposed to develop like a certain way so that it can hatch out and, you know, make the ring around and, you know, zip out. But that stuff can happen. And again, those are different. Like you can set your egg upside down. And a lot of times it's if we don't catch our hatcher or our incubator turning. So our incubators with the GQF, I mean, other than them beeping to tell you that they're moving, unless you're actually in the room to hear that beeping, you don't actually know that they're moving. So for us, we keep a piece of tape on the door. So whichever way the tray is on the downward position, we put the tape there. We check them twice a day. And as long as we can move that piece of tape to the other side, we know it's working. Just one simple thing to do to make sure your stuff is working.
And most people turn that beep off. So
yeah.
So,
Some of ours are on, some of them aren't. It just depends on the volume of them. Some of them are really loud, others you don't even hear them. So And then a slow hatch. So if you are on day 23, you candled on day 21, you still see there's movement. That doesn't always mean, I mean, that chicken can hatch, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a vigorous, like lively chick. Typically a slow hatch oftentimes means like the temperature in the incubator was too low. So the chick is developing, but not at the right rate that it should. So just, again, adding a second thermometer into your incubator is ideal. That way, whatever it says on the outside, it's saying on the inside as well. You can go to the next one. I think this was the last one. Maybe not. It might be. I'm not sure. I think there might be one more. You could tell. No, it is the last one. Anyway.
Yeah, because the brain hernia is on there where you get all excited. Yeah.
Yes. That's actually what I read, and I was like, oh yeah, that's on there. So the red hawks and the open or unhealed navel, a lot of times they are with chicks that actually did hatch, but they're not as vigorous as the other ones. An open navel, typically, what I've found anyway, is that the hatcher, temperature was too low. So like in the incubator, the temperature was right. The hatcher, it was there, but it wasn't quite there, caused the healing process to actually slow down some. So while the chicken was able to hatch out, it didn't heal the whole way. It happens. I find that those ones are usually our weaker chicks. Sometimes we call them if they're really bad. Other times we have a little coop of our own. They're just our backyard, like eating eggs, you know, if they make it that far. The red hawks is usually a sign that they're not able to get out of the shell quite right. So I find that's usually when your humidity is too low. The humidity, if it's kept right, there'll be enough moisture in the egg that it makes it easier for the chick to actually work its way around the shell to zip out. So yeah, if you have like the hawk on the leg of the chicken, it will be bright red. You'll know it struggled to get out. And oftentimes that can lead to splay leg. Like one leg will get stuck and the other leg will keep going, and eventually that's how they hatch, and it's sad. And a brain hernia. So I'm excited about this one only because I did a lot of research on this one, because for the first time ever it was either late spring or early fall, I cracked one open and there was the brain like on the outside of a fully developed chick. And I was like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? I've never seen this before. And a little research did lead me to this, but a lot of it came back as a ventilation issue. So if you're not having fresh air going in exchange of the hatchers, that can happen.
Amazing.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm good. All right, I'll get this out of there. We'll get Erin back in here. Hello, Erin. So we didn't talk about the gross stuff yet. Well, we waited for you to come back for that.
Thank you.
So, sorry, we'll mute Erin for a second so we can talk. I didn't prep Allison for this, but when you're breaking open the eggs, tell people how often it smells awful.
Well, I'm the only one on the farm. So me and Josh, we run the operation together, but I'm the only one that will crack open the eggs because he is like terrified that there's going to be a stinky one, and it freaks him out. Absolutely. I think I'm numb to the smell. So I don't think it smells too bad unless you actually have a rotten egg. In that case, I don't open those eggs. Usually you can tell, like they're just, that's a rotten egg and it's going.
Yeah, I agree. I don't feel like there's, and I mean, barely any odor at all when you do it. So it's a lot cleaner of a process than it seems like theoretically.
Yeah.
All right, Erin, sorry, I just brought you back. So what would it take to convince you to try it?
I'll do it.
So Allison talked about it. There are resources that will show you what the eggs look like on different days. I think you have that.
Yeah, I got one that shows it. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's lots of resources online. I put my favorite resource about doing breakout analysis is in the chat there.
I saw that, yeah.
I'm masquerading as Mike there. But yeah, I don't know. Does anybody have any questions we need to get to before we get on to other things?
I did want to comment that when we, again, looking at the questions that you had given me that I had answered, I don't know, 4 years ago or whatever, we used to have chicks hatching on day 20 and chicks still hatching on day 22. We don't have that anymore. Every chick hatches on day 21. We don't have any early or late anymore. They're all hatched. And I don't know what's changed, but it's way easier. And I know that our chicks are stronger because the ones that hatched on day 22 is like, I'm not going to sell these. And I don't know if I even want to let them live because they're not going to be very strong. So over time that has improved on our hatching.
Do you think you're setting more uniform eggs?
Only this year did I really start doing that. Up until this last January, before that, I was always just setting every egg. So I don't know but it's changed over time. I don't know if it's just that because we've been selecting so hard that we just have, the birds are getting better and better. Our breeders are getting better. That's the only thing I can come to the conclusion. Not much else has changed.
Yeah.
My understanding of the late hatching from some people is that if you don't, that is genetic, like a slow hatching. So if you're automatically stopping all the slow hatching from being in your flock, it takes years. It's not, a matter of minutes and you know what I mean? But
yeah, but we used to have them hatching like really early. Like we always set on Sundays. So then we have some hatching Saturday afternoon. And I'm like, whoa, these, how do I ship a chick that's another day early? So that's gone away, which is good for us as breeding,
I'd say
to see that gone.
Usually they talk about that as a heat, that your incubator's running a little too hot, you know what I mean? Or you have hot spots in your incubator. Was that, I know you've changed out your fan in your incubators. Have you? No, that was something else.
I have.
Okay, Allison has.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll move. Oh, wait, hold on. Do we want to talk about what Susan, we'll just put up what Susan said just so Allison can see it because it's referenced. So Susan says that they also see brain and neural tube issues with some sites of toxicity in utero. Glyphosate. Oh, it's because. So did you go GMO free, or since you had that brain problem, or not?
No. Yeah, I would find. I think all of our birds are 100% pasture raised. We do supplement them with our own feed, but I haven't had that issue since. It was just a one-time anomaly for me.
Well, this is self-indulgent, but what other cool things have you found? Have you had, the four-legged chicks and?
No, actually I'm almost sad that I haven't. Just with the amount that I've actually, cracked open. I would love to see more things, but I don't. The only other cool thing, the same time I saw the brain, I cracked another one open. It was a fully formed chick, but all of its organs were on the outside, and it was actually still alive. Like the heart was beating.
This is why I don't open my eggs.
Out of thousands.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I've had the 4 legs. That's fairly common.
Wow.
But I would say my biggest incubation where there's something wrong, even when they hatch is that I often get birds whose leg is through an abdominal loop, where it's, when their yolk went in, it pinned their leg up their body.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We do see that too. Yeah.
So lots of times they don't hatch, but depending on which leg it is, I think they can still hatch if it's the one on the opposite side of their, they still have enough oomph to push, what I mean? In that case. But, so I don't actually know a cause of that. I didn't call Allison and ask her to research that.
No,
we when they flip over.
Yeah, we do see that too. And I mean, it's probably just exactly that, just them moving at the same time of their growth rate. just happens.
Yeah, I think in most of the documentation, you're looking for, if you have eggs that die in the first 4 days and the last 4 days, those are sort of your safe harbors. Like that's where things are supposed to die. The ones that die early, like we're probably, just things weren't going right. And the ones that die late, you can, if everybody dies late, that can, but so many people think, oh, it was perfect. I opened it up and it was perfect. And I think there could be something wrong going on inside that chick. I've never actually dissected the chicks, the chicks themselves to see it, because I wouldn't know what a normal inside of a unhatched chick's supposed to look like. But it's when you have that she talked about nutrition and that sort of thing. It's like when you have a bunch of eggs that quit, between 5 and or even that 9 to 14 range, that's a real, that's a something you can probably fix. You know what I mean? So that's why knowing when it died is important. So versus just saying none of them did. I don't know if it was fertility, because she talked about, Allison talked about opening up your infertile, your quitters basically quickly, because it can be hard. The longer you store those, the harder it is to see if they were fertile or not. Like they lose, like the blood sort of dissolves back into the egg. So there's a little bit of advantage in looking at those quicker. All right. We do have a question. So let's check Matt here. Matt wants to know if we set eggs only in the morning. Erin says no. Yeah.
Our eggs go into the incubator and the hatcher in early evening.
Allison?
Yeah, we set ours. I usually aim to set mine usually late on Monday nights. I just like to have, if I know I'm hatching on Tuesday mornings, I try to set Monday night to give an extra 12, hour cushion for that, to make sure they're all going to hatch.
And that's what I do too, right? That's the last thing I do before I go to bed on, like if I'm shipping on a Tuesday, I'll set them on a Monday night.
Right. So we set them on Sunday night for shipping on Monday.
Matt, I do you want to type in there, do you only set eggs in the morning? And if so, why? Yeah, I'm curious. All right. So Michelle once says that she's had issues with eyeless chicks. Turkeys, cool. Is that a genetic issue or a hatching environment? Anyone?
I don't know much about turkeys, but I do know, like, I've had some chicks develop without one eye, but then they also usually have like a cross beak, scissor beak together. Sometimes that's a neurological issue, and other times that can be related back to nutrition again, making sure that the right amount of calcium, vitamin B12, all those things are within the egg that the chick can then grow and thrive off of.
We did turkeys for a couple years, but we did never have that problem with eyeless poults. So
I would think if you were getting it often that you might want to look at your breeders. Make sure it isn't genetic.
Yeah, I'd say, and whenever you're facing is it genetic or is it the hatching environment, I'd say the percentage of birds it's happening to is, do you know what I mean? If it's happening to everybody, I'd look at the environment. If it's happening to 6 out of 80 and they all had different parents, but you can't, if you only have a trio and it's happening to everybody, it could still be genetic because of your number of birds is lower. So, so maybe Susan will know an idea on the eyeless turkeys, but yuck, that's sad. I wonder how they could manage. They have that, where they can sort of see through that extra sensory perception, but maybe they, all right, well, let's see. I don't see any more for now. So, all right. So Erin, what fertility and hatchability rate would make you say, okay, something's wrong? I got to look at my feed. I got to look at what's your low threshold of what this is for young birds? Like, cause it gets different as they get older, right? But if you're 1-year-olds, you're 18 months, for those guys, what?
Yeah. I haven't had it so far. I have found that as the year progresses, meaning January, like to May or whatever, my fertility goes down a little bit. My Delawares, and I'm in California, which can be different from anybody else having Delawares in another part of the country, but my Delawares lay great in the winter. So I have a ton of eggs to set January, February, March. Everybody's out on nice green grass where everything's getting brown in June, where we are. So if I do later hatches for orders like into May, my fertility goes down a little bit, maybe down to 82% versus 88. If I was below 80 on fertility and hatchability, I would really be rethinking what I was doing. But I haven't ever reached that. So I haven't had to go back and look and say, what do I need to change? This past 8 months or so, we've been using Fertrell's Poultry NutriBalancer. And so I've talked to Jeff and told him I really want to track my my chicks this year and see, did they gain more weight? Am I going to have better breeding? So I am tracking that to see what I can do with it. But again, you asked a question about I haven't gotten that low that I have to worry about it so far, knock on wood.
And you keep good records, right? So if all of a sudden your hatchability went down,
oh yeah,
you know what I mean, that you would know. And you just said the Fertrell, are you actually using the NutriBalancer or are you using their new supplement?
The NutriBalancer for breeders.
Okay, so yeah, so that's actually it's the Poultry Show and
breeder.
Poultry Show and Breeder supplement. So yes. The NutriBalancer is the mineral mix.
Correct.
So you're looking at the
poultry breeder, yeah. The poultry breeder one.
Just making sure. I'm like, they look the same, sort of. One looks a little bit more fish mealy, but yeah. Then
they do have that wonderful smell to them.
Yeah. All right. So you sort of answered this in your question, so I'll go to Allison now. So how much of the year do you hatch? She talked about seasonality. That makes a huge difference on how much you're expecting to get out.
So we hatch and ship chicks in the spring and then again in the fall. But this year is our first year where we're actually going to try to hatch pretty regularly so we can have like starter birds to offer. Mm-hmm. So this will be my first year kind of playing with that. But I do know from past years, we try to integrate new birds into our flocks, usually in the summer and the winter, because when we integrate new birds, we usually see a fertility decrease because of just there's distraction, there's new, pecking order and all that. So I try to avoid setting eggs in the summer, only because I know the fertility is going to be much lower. And then the same thing in the winter. Well, fertility is going to be low, but we hardly have many eggs in the winter. So there's that.
My first year, this will shock Erin, but my first year, I set eggs every 2 weeks once they started laying, so that I would have a graph of what it. Do you know what I mean? Like, but however, what I didn't count on was the fact that fertility and that stuff would change so much when they were older. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it didn't have as dramatic. It had a dramatic, like, up and down, like for that, but if you did the same thing with a 2-year-old hen, I think it wouldn't go up and down. It would go, it would just stop. You know what I mean? Like, so I think, I should have waited. But once you do that 1 year and you find find homes for all those baby chicks randomly throughout the year, I wasn't willing to do that again. but it's amazing the difference. And, all right, so let's see. We got a question. All right, so Lisa's curious to hear more about the differences in humidity with various egg colors. When all are hatched together, what levels of hatchability does Allison see with the dark eggs and the blue eggs together? So.
That's a good question because there's definitely variability. So our copper Morans, and sometimes even the Walsummers, but the copper Morans more than anything, when we put them in the incubator, they definitely prefer a lower humidity during incubation and then a higher humidity during hatch. If I have other breeds in with them, especially like my Americanas, A lot of times we find our Americanos will be the first to start hatching. They'll want to start hatching on Monday instead of Tuesday, which can be frustrating, but I know that it all has to do with each of the different breeds interacting with each other. So for me, because of the space that I have to just roll with it and put them in the hatcher when it's time to put them in the hatcher. So because of that, typically it's going to sound really low, I'm sure, but I aim only to have a 65% hatch rate on my Copper Morans, because I know that my other breeds, I can't sacrifice them for one breed. When all 4 of my other breeds do well at the same temperature, and then I have my Morans that don't, that's just how it has to be. Like, I have to sacrifice the Copper Morans having excellent hatch rates for my other breeds. Now, if I were to just hatch my Copper Morans, I can get 100% hatch rate. It's just a matter of setting them in an incubator by themselves, setting them in the hatcher by themselves at the correct temperature and hatch or humidity.
So what I'm hearing is that you need the Moran lovers out there to do a GoFundMe for a Moran specialty incubator and hatcher.
Sure, Karen, thank you.
Just checking.
Yes.
All right. I'm guessing that in the chat you guys can talk to each other, but in case you didn't see Michelle, Susan needs a little bit more details in order to see if she can figure out your turkey problem. All right, so we got that. All right, we'll talk nutrition. So Erin, you started that the supplement. Did you start it in time for hatching season this year? Or
Yes,
maybe ever?
We were on a trial basis, so Jeff sent us some out, I don't know, like October or something. We got a bag, and so our breeding pens have been getting it since probably October, and then we've been putting our chicks are on it as well. I've only done one weight on my chicks. I weighed them at 6 weeks, and they're about the same as last year. So I don't have any difference just in a short time to show a difference for either their parents passing it on or them getting it in their feed. I mean, I can go on and on. The supplement is awesome. The birds look really good, but I don't know that it's changed my hatchability and fertility that much. Maybe a tiny bit, but not a huge amount.
And this is something that I think I find happening across the board is when you have a good hatch rate and a good fertility, like you don't have to do a bunch of research. I mean, you don't have to change a bunch of things. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? So that tends to happen on the other side where like, okay, I got 45% fertility. What do I do? Like now you're looking for inches. Do you know what I mean? Like, but when everything's working, you don't really have to optimize.
Right. I agree. I already have pretty good, I think I have good numbers. So it would take a huge amount to increase it that couple percentage points. But
in case I'm not going to put it up, but in case you want to know, Michelle's turkeys have no eyeballs at all. So, so we'll let Susan answer that over there in the chat before Erin passes out. But all right. So
I don't do turkeys anymore. It's okay.
Matt wants to know, Erin, how are you feeding the supplement?
So it's 1 teaspoon per breeding bird. So we just put it into the feeder. Jeff has suggested just putting on the top, but I put it down at the bottom of the feeder in the round part where we have pellets, so the pellets are coming out. And for the chicks, I've actually just been giving them free choice, which I know I shouldn't be doing, and they'll gobble it up. So I'm not mixing it in. I'm just putting it, easily around the food. But they go right for it. They love it.
And I know people who are feeding a mash feed instead of pellets that they're having some good success now with a little bit of oil. So a little bit of vegetable oil or olive oil.
Jeff, that's what Jeff told me that Kenny was doing Troiano was doing, that he's adding olive oil to it and making a mash.
Yeah. All right, Mike, do you want to come back on and talk about your incubation problems with your breeds or your species?
Well, I always have problems. No, I think most of them. So over the years, I've seen nutrition in my turkey eggs. I've also seen environment where I've had my incubator sitting in a room that caught a lot of drafts. And at least that's my analysis. Is I had a lot of dead end shell the 1 year. Again, with turkey eggs, I seem to do okay with chicken eggs, but I have a learning curve when it comes to things that have to hatch like beyond the chicken.
Well, and that's the hardest. That's the hard. I mean, those are harder. There's been a lot more research and a lot. Everything's geared towards chicken eggs, all the equipment and all the, So
Yeah, but when I got my turkeys figured out, I would have. I would always have like a 90% fertility rate. And then my hatching out of that was up around, I think, 65 or 70. It was about as good as I got it.
It's not terrible.
But going with the automatic turner was a big deal too. Like, because I started with the little GQF styrofoam one, and just with the turkey eggs in particular, like trying to just open that up every day, twice a day or something, it just didn't do well. So,
I'll admit to a big cheat I have done this year is that those turners for the GQF styrofoams, I've now put those on my shelves in the wine fridge. So now I don't even have to turn my hatching egg, my storing eggs. They just turn themselves. So
Smart.
I'm curious to see if that makes a difference, because I keep mine. I'm more on the 14-day range, just with my numbers and the fact that I'm single mating. So, like, if I want 10 eggs from number 2, like, to grow up together, so I'm holding them longer than I should. I'll admit that. All right. I had something brilliant to say, but I have now forgotten it. So if y'all could just remember that I was going to say something brilliant.
I want to know about Muscovy duck eggs. Have any of you hatched Muscovies?
Yeah. I have one time, and I already told Mike this, I hatched them, but because the mama got eaten. So I finished them off in the incubator. Oh, that does remind me of my brilliant thing I was going to say. It's just, Allison really hit. I'm reading this book about incubation. It's very long and technical, but the dirty egg, the when they're laid in bedding, in straw, on the ground, all of that, like that whole sucking in of what's outside the egg when it dries and when it cools is the same principle of why they make you wash eggs in hot water. You know what I mean? Because the egg
expands.
Right. It sucks everything in. So just any lots of people, all their birds lay on the coop floor and on the, or in, especially duck. That's might be even another issue with turkey and duck eggs. I mean, I don't know too many turkeys and ducks that are using pristine rollout nest boxes for their, just makes everything a little bit harder. So if you can, one more, movement and handling of eggs. We had one person who was having good fertility, terrible hatchability, and they switched from bringing their eggs in on their gator, on their ATV, to carrying them by hand, and it made a huge difference.
Really? Wow.
Just because the jostling of that egg and the handling of it, I was like, wow, that's an easy fix that I would have never thought of.
I just re-listened to Pat Foreman's presentation from the conference. And she had a slide in there about that, about the chillets that got, you break it and the embryo, the chick moves around and may attach to some place it shouldn't be attaching to.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, all right, Mike, bring it home. We got 3 seconds.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks. I want to thank Karen, Erin, and Allison for coming in here tonight and having this conversation about incubation. Feel free to continue it in the APA Heritage Breeders discussion list for all you members out there.
Oh, and Allison, you said it was okay if we shared those slides
Sure,
in
sure.
the list. So I'll post those sometime. Yeah.
Awesome. And then thanks everyone for participating and listening and asking questions. Good night.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.